Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 2208 pass, and speaking to that.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2208 directs the Department of General Services to remove the statue of former Virginia Governor and U.S. Senator Harry F. Byrd Sr. From the Capitol Square. The bill directs the department to store the statue until such time as the General Assembly determines its final disposition. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that, again, its passage.
The Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding House Bill 2208? For purpose, Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to speak to the members of the body about the life of Harry F. Byrd Sr. and encourage the members of the body to consider his life in its entirety and his contributions to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Notwithstanding the bad, Senator Harry F. Byrd had a life that left Virginia quite a legacy. And I would like to ask the members of this body to consider that that legacy is worthy of being recognized and perhaps being interpreted and allowing him to remain in Capitol Square.
We've been asked to, overlook, what a major part, certainly a major part of his life and remembrance was. But I would say to the senator from Fauquier County that it's almost like saying, other than that, Ms. Lincoln, how'd you enjoy the play? Probably 100,000 students, if not more, in this state were kept out of school for 4 years, simply because the United States Supreme Court ruled that under Brown versus the Board of Education that you couldn't have separate but equal. It simply didn't exist. And it was a 9-0 decision, which upset Senator Byrd. As a result, like I said, over 100,000 students in Virginia were kept out of school for 4 years. And some of them, years later, are still living with the psychological damage done by that. But this was a major, major problem. And I just don't see how we can overlook the fact that all of these children, for no other reason than their race, were kept out of school for 4 years.
He was the architect and the face of massive resistance, not just in Virginia, but across this country. And as the senior senator from Fairfax said, we are still dealing with the aftermath of that, with unequal schools, inequity in our schools, inequity in our neighborhoods, inequity in every system we have in Virginia. And because we don't talk about it, because we don't talk about the ugly parts of it, we didn't talk about it for so long, we glossed over it. We're still trying to figure out how to grapple with it. There are other places this statue can go and be put into context.
I don't think that there's a way to contextualize the statue there. It's something I've thought about a lot. Probably shock you all how much I've spent thinking about this bill this session. But I don't think there's a way to contextualize it. I don't think that there's any reason, any benefit to it continuing there. And tomorrow's the 65th anniversary of him calling for massive resistance. And if you think about the quick math in your head, you'll realize it wasn't just a quick reaction to the Brown decision. He calculated, waited, and then called for this aggressive posture, and then assembled thousands of people at Capitol Square to try to force the General Assembly and the governor down this path. And I come from a district that is very interesting. There was times when Virginia only sent 2 Republicans to this body, and they were usually from where Senator Obenshain, Senator from Rockingham, and where I'm from, Floyd and Carroll. And the reason that they knew that they were sending Republicans who would not get assigned to committees, and it was a point of defiance against the Byrd organization. He was not simply a man of his time. There were folks openly defying him, but it was very hard for anyone to effectively politically oppose him because they passed a series of laws at his direction to make it virtually impossible. It's no coincidence that the Byrd organization collapses after the passage of the Voting Rights Act and the striking down of the poll tax. It all happens right there at the same time. But it was not simply a creature of his time. There were folks actively fighting him, and it took outside intervention to allow it to happen. And then Virginia chose to go very different directions on several of the things that I think they would have chosen earlier. So it's with that, I think that tomorrow being the 65th anniversary, it's fitting that we take this action before then and we don't continue to honor something that should not be honored.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there are a few of us here in the General Assembly who call ourselves the Brown Babies. And we call ourselves that. That's Delegate McQuinn, Delegate Ward, myself, because we were born in a year of Brown versus the Board of Education. And the year that the Supreme Court decided that schools should be desegregated. And on May 17th, 1954, that day in states like Virginia and other southern states was actually called Black Monday, the day that the Supreme Court handed down that decision. And it is unfortunate that here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, an individual like Harry F. Byrd Sr. became the architect of a plan that he would coin a phrase called massive resistance. That is anything that would thwart that decision, that schools would be integrated, to the point that schools would close down and not allow an individual who sits here on the floor of this Senate to go to school, where that person still deals with the vestiges of having to dealt with not being able to be educated because of what Harry F. Byrd Sr. decided to do as a United States Senator, because he decided that Black folks should not go to school, should not be educated, should not have the benefit of an education. This was not in the late 1700s of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. This was not in the 1800s. This was in the 1950s that he made this decision. All other things aside, for what he did, he orchestrated massive resistance. And he does not deserve a place on Capitol Square. And with that, Mr. President, I again move passage of HB 2208.
Question is, shall House Bill 2208 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 3.
Ayes 36, noes 3. House Bill 2208 passes.